Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for October 8th, 2023. Every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state. So let's see what's in the news this week. First story I'd like to talk about is from the Loveland Reporter Herald. U.S. Representative Ken Buck joins Colorado House Democrats in voting to oust McCarthy as Speaker. So Ken Buck was the only Republican to vote against McCarthy in this hearing to get him out as Speaker. Let's take a look here. It's from October 3rd, updated October 4th, 2023. With less than 45 days until Congress's last-minute bill to avert a government shutdown expires, the U.S. House will have to elect a new Speaker before any new legislation can be brought forward. All but two representatives from Colorado on Tuesday joined a vote to oust Representative Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, marking the first time in U.S. history for such a vote to succeed. Colorado Republican Ken Buck voted with Representative Yadira Caraveo and the state's four other Democratic representatives to vacate the office of the Speaker. Republican Reps Doug Lamborn and Lone Boebert voted against the resolution. Buck was one of 8 Republicans who voted for the measure, which was introduced by Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida. With the 208 Democrats who were present for the vote, Gaetz, McCarthy's chief rival in the GOP, warned he would introduce the motion after McCarthy passed the temporary funding bill on Saturday. So I think this is a good thing. I mean, McCarthy was not liked by the Freedom Caucus types, although Lauren Boebert did vote for him, so pretty interesting there. Of course, seeing a Lamborn vote for him as well. Very interesting to see Ken Buck kind of set himself apart from the other 2 Republican congressmen in Colorado to force a new path for himself. You know, there's been talk about him wanting to get on the media after he's done in Congress, so we shall see. Clearly, Ken Buck has some aspirations outside of Congress, so very interesting to see. I'd like to know what you think in the comments below. But, I'm not too upset that Ken Buck decided to get McCarthy out. Well, actually, a little surprised that Boebert did not vote against McCarthy. Maybe, of course, that has to do with her reelection coming up, and she needs some of those people who are going to help fund her campaign, her reelection campaign. And, of course, Doug Lamborn, no surprise that he supported McCarthy, of course. Well, let's move on. Let's see what else we got in the news. So John Caldara, president of the Independence Institute, just had a recent publicity stunt, pretty fun stuff. He dropped poop on the Denver City Hall. So this is from October 1st, 2023, his explanation of why he did so. Let's take a look. Absolutely, it was a stunt, maybe even a childish one, but I guarantee you it was born of anger, quite genuinely. Last Monday, I again scooped the human excrement I often clean up from around my downtown office building, left along with the other trash from Denver's finest homeless. But this time, in front of television cameras and reporters, I dropped it on the steps of Denver City Hall. Why City Hall? Because the decisions made inside that building by city council members and mayors are the reasons this filth keeps piling up. I've received angry phone calls from people saying my stunt was cruel, stigmatizing the homeless. I called attention that they trespass on private property and defecate on it. It's not fake news. What I find cruel is since John Hickenlooper started rewarding being a vagrant, the victims of this homeless crisis, taxpayers, residents, workers, and visitors, seem not to matter to our city and state leaders. If our elected officials cared just 1/10 as much for the victims of the crimes caused by the mentally ill and drugged on the streets as they do providing services for them, our streets would be clean and safe. The not-for-profit organization I run, Independence Institute, thinkfreedom.org, was founded in 1985 with a mission of promoting personal and economic liberty and the responsibility that goes along with it in Colorado. To purchase a building within walking distance of the state capitol was always a dream. When we made it happen more than a decade ago, it transformed our work. Like a homeowner's first house is to them, this building is to us and our donors. It is a jewel to us, hopefully a point of pride to our neighbors, and an outhouse, trash can, opium den, and crash pad for drugged out casual criminals. In the last several years, we had to regularly clean up litter, trash bottles, used condoms, urine, vomit, used syringes, and human feces from around our private property. Our windows have been broken. The building has been broken into and vandalized. On a regular basis, we must chase people off our property. That is, if we can wake them up. So, John Caldara has a big point. Of course, it's nice to see him expressing some frustration, but also some leadership and hopefully getting some attention on how just just how bad things are getting in downtown Denver. The homeless crisis, of course, is something we talk about every week here on the weekly roundup, but it's interesting to see John Caldara using it to get some more attention going and to get some people fired up about this. So let's move on. Denverite.com. Now, Denverite is part of Colorado Public Radio, just so you knew, if you didn't know that. Denver's already seen 341 more eviction filings in 2023 than in 2022. It could get worse in 2024. Now, we talked about this before with the evictions going on. Of course, I also talked about this on the Proposition HH video, how bad it is for renters. This article is from October 2nd, 2023. So in September, Denver saw the second highest number of eviction filings in county court in any month in the last at least the past 5 years. A total of 1,174 households faced losing their homes through the legal system. So, of course, this is a major issue, right? Rent is increasing. We've seen property taxes increase. Costs are increasing all around. So, it's going to get more expensive, more difficult to rent in Denver. This means, of course, people might not be able to afford it and they get evicted. So what's interesting is going to be the response, right? So there's some other organizations here, like the city of Denver has the Department of Housing Stability. And of course, they want more money so they can help get people staying in their homes. You know, it seems like a good idea, but it's really creating perverse incentives for renters and for landlords. Even as federal funding for rental assistance expires, this funding represents a significant increase in the city's support for this intervention. Mayor Mike Johnston has dedicated $12.6 million to eviction prevention, 4 times more than the city did before the pandemic. Now, of course, putting $12 million to keep rent high, that's what this does. You know, if you're giving money to property owners, to landlords, and saying, hey, don't evict these people, we're going to pay their rent for them to the tune of $12 million, well, you're not allowing for the market to stabilize. Maybe the rents are too high. Maybe it needs to come down. Maybe demand is increasing or supply is staying stagnant. But the city's intervention into the rental market is not necessarily a good thing. While Johnston has increased city money dedicated to stopping evictions, the overall amount being spent will be dropping from roughly $21 million to nearly $9 million. That's because the federal government has not renewed funding for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program that has been in effect during the pandemic and has helped keep many people housed. So, of course, we see another federal program that's pumping money into this rental market, meaning that these costs are not necessarily reflective of the true market value of these rentals, right? Government subsidizing these rental properties, then the costs will probably come down when those subsidies end. I mean, that's just economics. So this is going to be very interesting, of course, because we're going to see continuing into next year in 2024, the state legislature is going to be trying to do some anti-eviction laws. We saw them do that this year, and they're going to continue to do that. So very interesting to see how this is going to play out. Of course, you know, one of the most important things for renters is to vote against Proposition HH, as you could see in a previous video from last week, because it doesn't help. It doesn't make anything better for them. Let's go ahead and move on. From the Gazette.com, October 4th, 2023. Colorado Springs sees crime decline as it rises in Denver. Now, this is something I've talked about before, that Denver, is in a bad situation a lot of the times, right? There's a lot of crime. As we saw the homelessness, we saw the frustration of somebody like John Caldara, whose building is constantly under siege from this criminal homeless element in Denver. But Colorado Springs has an opportunity to present itself from a different perspective, right? They have the opportunity to say, hey, we're not Denver. We're the second largest city, the second largest metropolitan area in the state. We're going to do things a little bit differently, and we're going to show that there's a different leadership style, different policies that can make life a little bit better. And that's a good thing. That contrasting viewpoint, those contrasting policies, it's that great experiment of different municipalities, different states, even. We see this at the national level, where these different places, these different political entities are trying different rules to see what works and what doesn't. Let's look at the article here. While crime has been rising across the state, Colorado Springs has seen a decline in crime since 2010, a recent analysis by the Common Sense Institute shows. Former Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin presented crime data Tuesday, comparing Colorado Springs crime trends and investments to Denver statistics as part of a panel of experts who presented on community issues such as education achievement and local government spending. The data came from a report he recently authored as a fellow from the nonpartisan institute that leans right. The crime stats seem to fall in line with investment by Colorado Springs, he said. The town dedicates the largest share of its budget to the police department. which has received an average of 32.6% of the budget from 13 to 23, his report shows. Spending on the police department peaked in 2020 when they received 38% of the budget, his data shows. Quote, they have prioritized their police department in those uniform positions. Denver's spending on its police department has fallen from 13% of its budget in 2013 to 10.3% in 2021, his report shows. So that's pretty interesting, right? Colorado Springs spending a significant portion of city resources in the police department, going after criminals, getting people, investigations going, right? Going after people who have committed these crimes. Denver has 13% of its budget was as high, now down to 10.3% of the budget. So Denver's not prioritizing the police to go after criminals. Now, don't get me wrong, the police can often be wrong and victimize innocent people, of course. But, if crime's increasing and your police aren't able to handle it, that's a recipe for disaster. That's what we're seeing in Denver. So it's very interesting to see how Colorado Springs could present themselves as this contrast to what's happening up in the Denver metro area. Let's go ahead and move on. CPR.org, the is Colorado state affiliate for National Public Radio, pro-government news organization mostly. Farmers fear laws meant to protect agricultural workers could put them out of business. End iconic Colorado crops from October 3rd, 2023. Definitely an issue I've talked about before. Colorado lawmakers in the state legislature have passed some very restrictive legislation, specifically targeting farmers, farm owners, and making it a little bit more difficult for them to employ people. Really, that's what it comes down to. Fourth generation farmer Eric Hannigan fears recent legislative changes could make him and others like him close their doors. He's one of just a few farmers that still grow the iconic Rocky Ford melon in Otero County. So, of course, like most of these articles, they start off with a little story here. This guy's a 1,000-acre farm on land their family has tilled soil, tended to crops, and made a life from for more than a century. Wow. It's pretty amazing. I think you'll find a general consensus among all the produce growers in the Arkansas Valley that we want our kids to have a better life. And it's just too hard and it's not fun anymore. 2 years ago, Colorado passed the Agricultural Workers' Rights Bill. The expansive and controversial bill mandates rest and meal breaks for field workers and allows for unionization and collective bargaining. Workers must make at least $13.25 an hour, the state's current minimum wage. Those on certain visas, including those who work on Hannigan's farm, get over $3 more. Wow. Hannigan has no problem with a lot of that and already followed many of the new rules. My guys, if they were a little thirsty, they could go get the water. If they need to go to the bathroom, they could go to the bathroom. I didn't keep a thumb on them, he said. But now, with all these regulations and everything, I'm going to have to hire a guy and micromanage their minutes. And so it just makes them tougher on them. The new hire will likely come next year and is just one example of how Hannigan's been spending this season figuring out what he needs to change and when he needs to do it. In seasons past, he hired 15 workers every April from Guanajuato, Mexico, on federal worker visas. He said he pays about $1,000 per person for paperwork and travel, and they make $16.85 an hour. He also provides housing and records from the State Department of Labor show Hannigan Farms has passed all inspections meant to ensure workers have adequate housing. Hannigan said for him, it's not just about checking a box. So, of course, here's a guy who's trying to do the right thing, somebody who's really, creating a farm, feeding the people of Colorado, and this new legislation is making it nearly impossible for him to do so if you continue to read the article. New regulations, new laws increase costs. So many of the agricultural industry is operating on razor-thin margins and just barely making it. So any new attempt by the state legislature to interfere in their business can put them out of work. I mean, can shut down their farms. It's not something we want to see happen in Colorado. I think one of the big goals of the Colorado Liberty Movement is to help fight for the agricultural market, the agricultural industry, to help protect farmers. This food freedom is something we really need, especially in this age of globalization, of shortages, of lockdowns years past. The need for local agriculture seems more important than ever. It's an issue that's going to keep coming up and something let's hopefully we can help with. So let's move on here. Wanted to show you some of the tweets from today. I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know if you saw what happened with Colorado's State Representative Tim Hernandez. So Tim Hernandez is a Democrat from Denver, just recently appointed last month. Barely been in the seat a month, if even. So there was a CBS News report here showing a protest, an actual pro-Palestine protest, a Palestine solidarity rally after the Israel attack that happened yesterday. Now, if you pause it right there, you can see Tim Hernandez spitting. Tim Hernandez is there. He's at the actual pro-Palestine event. That's fine and all, but this is a sitting state representative, and some of the chants they've been doing, some of the other issues that have been going on have raised some serious concerns. Of course, Hernandez is not shy to controversy, as many state legislators are. Tim Hernandez is the fourth Democratic Socialist of America member to be serving in our state legislature currently. So, no surprise. Here's his General Assembly page, Tim Hernandez. No occupation listed, of course, former teacher. And there he is, just to get an idea. Palestinian flag in the background, of course, plenty of others. Now, one thing to remember about Tim Hernandez is he is going to be focusing on gun violence prevention and climate sustainability. So this guy is a gun grabber coming after our guns, and of course, says, hey, we can set an entire community on fire by getting people mobilized and organized. Big friends with Elizabeth Epps, a role model of his, and here he is out, chanting at these rallies and showing his support a day after this deadly attack in Israel, killing countless people. Here's a screenshot from the Denver Democratic Socialists of America Twitter feed from August 28th. Huge congratulations to our member Tim Hernandez on becoming the next representative for State House District 4. Socialism is the future. So, of course, this guy is as controversial as it gets. This is the new face of the Democratic Party of Colorado, and it's raising a lot of concern, of course, as you can imagine, with everything that's been happening in the Middle East recently. So something to keep an eye on, something to continue with. One thing that was, of course, disappointing was that CBS didn't even know that this guy was a sitting Colorado legislator. Maybe they just didn't want to mention it. Maybe they did know, but it's pretty obvious if you've been following politics that who this guy is when you see him down there at the state capitol. So pretty interesting. A lot of posts on Twitter there. So just take a look at that and see. Of course, if you want to look at some of the background, Elizabeth Epps, a Democratic Socialist, celebrating the fact that Tim Hernandez got elected. Lorena Garcia, a very outspoken socialist, and sitting in the state legislature currently. Very excited that Tim Hernandez is working with her. And of course, Javier Marbury, the anti-property state legislature and eviction lawyer, very, very happy for Tim Hernandez to be serving. So, of course, with everything that's going on, we can only imagine that the Democratic Socialists of America are supportive of Hernandez out there. And unfortunately, the DSA, as we've seen across the country, has been out there protesting and potentially preparing for riots over this Palestine issue. So, pretty interesting, something to keep an eye on. Be very interesting to see how the members of the Democratic caucus reflect on one of their own being at this pro-Palestine protest who wants to who called for a forceful cultural revolution. So, of course, is this what he means? Is this what Representative Tim Hernandez means with a forceful cultural revolution? The violence that we've seen in the Middle East yesterday. I don't know. He wants to take our guns. He wants a forceful cultural revolution. Really is a guy who's representing the Colorado Democratic Party. This is where we're at. People get involved and speak up. Let's go and move on. From Complete Colorado, most important websites you should be checking every day. Complete Colorado, page 2, some great original reporting here. One of their columnists, Ari Armstrong, Colorado abolitionists send incoherent message on justice, for October 3rd, 2023. So this included this here because it does include some information on Tim Hernandez. That was interesting, also in the news this week. Two Colorado legislators that I know of, Elizabeth Epps and Tim Hernandez, declare themselves to be abolitionists. Traditionally, that term referred to the abolition of slavery. So, what do these legislators mean by the term? Although Epps has been cagey in defining her position, abolition in this context refers to opposition to police and prisons. So, does Epps literally want to abolish all police departments and prisons? That's unclear. Here's how a local leftist columnist, Quentin Young, described abolition in this sense. While eliminating police and prisons is indeed an eventual objective for many abolitionists, it is inseparable from another goal, to create a community in which police and prisons are essentially obsolete. It might occur to you at this point that abolition with respect to the criminal justice system is utopian fantasy. Some people are just determined to hurt other people and steal their stuff. And we're not going to stop them by holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and giving them more welfare benefits. Still, I agree with Epps that our criminal justice system is a mess. We incarcerate way too many people, often for stupid reasons, often for far too long, typically in horrific conditions. I have long called for an end to the drug war, largely because it is immoral to send armed agents of the state to harass and jail people just for consuming drugs. Epps, on the other hand, opposes the drug war, but favors sending heavily armed police agents to jail peaceable gun owners who commit technical violations of arbitrary laws. Hypocrisy she has never tried to explain. So these are the people who are currently serving in our state legislature, people like Tim Hernandez, people like Elizabeth Epps, and others, as we just kind of talked about. So check this article out if you want to get an idea into their incoherent viewpoints and their, it's not consistent in terms of what they want to do. They want the state to arrest people they don't like, and they want the state to leave other criminals alone just because they agree with them on an ideological level. It's very, very dangerous. So let's go ahead and move on here. We're going to check out this website, the lobby-co.com. Pretty interesting. So Tim Hernandez, as we talked about, was appointed. There's actually quite a few appointed legislators in the state government right now. Colorado's an undemocratic shame. It seems that the process of appointing Colorado legislators, rather than electing them, has become all too common in the state. In fact, a staggering 1 in 4 state lawmakers have taken office through this undemocratic method. And the latest addition to this dubious club is Manny Rutinel, handpicked by a Colorado Democratic Party committee to fill a vacancy in House District 32. So there's this trend where a state legislature or other politician, instead of serving out their term and not running for reelection, they resign during their term. That means a vacancy committee made up of party members, usually the most dedicated party members in that district, get to vote and determine who's going to replace them. So these people, of course, have an advantage when reelection comes up because now they've been an incumbent. They've made those connections to a lot of the different groups out there who are going to support them during election time. And it's always easier to get an incumbent elected, of course. This is that Manny Rutini guy, newly appointed Colorado State Representative. This guy is a total environmental, it looks apparently anti-meat, anti-agriculture kind of activist type here. Before you applaud Mr. Rutinil on his new gig, let's look at the facts. He was chosen by a mere 24 people out of a district with a population of nearly 90,000 and 47,000 active voters. That's less than 0.03% of the population making a decision for the entire district. How can we call this a fair representation of the people? Colorado prides itself on being a progressive state, but when it comes to filling legislative vacancies, we seem to be stuck in the past. The process is shrouded in secrecy, with party insiders making decisions behind closed doors. And let's not forget that this entire process completely disregards the votes of the largest voting bloc in Colorado, the unaffiliated voters. But what's even more concerning is that this undemocratic process has become a trend. The 2023 legislative session saw 24 out of 100 lawmakers being appointed through a vacancy committee, and the number has only grown since then. So much for giving power to the people. Meanwhile, other states have found an efficient and fair way to fill these vacancies through special elections. But here in Colorado, we seem to prefer sticking to outdated and flawed methods. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, only 25 states use the vacancy committee process. And it's time for Colorado to join the other 25 in prioritizing democracy over convenient. Recently appointed and sworn in Colorado State Rep. Tim Hernandez. So Tim Hernandez won with just 39 votes. That's it, 39 votes. That's all it took to put a radical anti-police Marxist into the Colorado House these days. So very interesting. A lot of people don't realize that a quarter of our state legislators have not been elected. They've been appointed, and some of them are pretty extreme radical types, and it's kind of concerning. So something to keep an eye on, something that may become an issue in the 2024 election. Let's go ahead and move on here. ColoradoPolitics.com. Interim Transportation Panel greenlights proposal to overhaul Colorado's towing industry. October 4th, 2023, Marianne Goodland. So we saw last week that the same transportation panel and these committees are pushing legislation to tax trucks, to go after large vehicles, to basically try and destroy the Colorado's car culture. Now, here's their next plan. The towing industry could be in for a major shakeup in Colorado, and it's one some in the industry appear to favor. The legislature's Interim Transportation Legislative Review Committee whittled down their list of 10 possible bills to 5 on Tuesday. Those 5 now go to the Legislative Council Committee for a final okay before heading to the General Assembly in the 2024 session. Representative Andrew Bosnecker, Democrat from Fort Collins, plans to be the prime sponsor on legislation to overhaul the financial incentives for the towing industry, which would shift who pays for tows. It's currently the responsibility of the vehicle owner to pay for towing charges, which can run into the hundreds of dollars. Seems fair if you illegally tow, you park on somebody's or illegally park if you park on somebody's private property and they don't want you there. You probably should pay the towing charge, right? Under the bill, that financial responsibility would shift to a property manager or property owner. Bosnecker explained Tuesday that requiring property owners to pay for the tow would disincentive the industry's bad actors from patrolling parking lots and towing any vehicle they can because they know they can. The property owner will exhibit far greater discretion on when to tow, Bosnecker told the committee. This is insane, right? I mean, this is absolutely and utterly crazy. To these small business owners, these people who own small amounts of property, and you're going to say, hey, you got to fork over the money, bud. You want to tow somebody who's been illegally parked on your lot for weeks, for months, and you got to pay to get them out of there? I mean, that's absolutely and utterly ridiculous. Bosnecker is a clown, and it's very unfortunate to see this attack on property owners and attack on the towing industry. It serves a purpose, people. Anyways, we'll keep an eye on that going into the legislative session here in 2024. Let's move on for now. Article from DenverGazette.com. Federal judge advances lawsuit against Griswold, of course, Jena Griswold, our Secretary of State, over non-disclosure of dead voter data. Secretary of State Jena Griswold asserted she cannot disclose reports containing deceased voters' information because of federal privacy protections. Well, the judge isn't buying it. October 4th, 2023. A federal judge has rejected an attempt by Secretary of State Jena Griswold to dismiss a lawsuit seeking to declare her office has withheld data about deceased voters in violation of the law. Colorado and more than 24 other states are members of the Electronic Registration Information Center, a data sharing organization that enables states to maintain more accurate voter registries. ERIC sends regular reports to members about deceased and likely deceased voters through its authorized access to Social Security Administration data. In 2021, Griswold's office declined to provide ERIC's deceased voter reports to the Public Interest Legal Foundation, which touts its work preventing voter fraud, and whose chairman, Cleta Mitchell, was recommended for prosecution in connection with former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 Georgia election results. Wow. The foundation claimed it was entitled to the information under the National Voter Registration Act, which Congress enacted in 1993 to, among other things, make it easier for voters to register through motor vehicle offices. Part of the law requires states to make available all records concerning the implementation of programs and activities to ensure accurate voter lists. So pretty interesting here to see that, there's some talk that Colorado's voter rolls are not accurate, that there's a lot of people who have passed on, maybe have moved out of the state, and this is distorting the data and getting a lot of ballots out there. A lot of ballots are out in Colorado that are going to places that those people don't live there anymore. It'd be pretty easy for somebody to commit voter fraud using those ballots and somebody who has passed away. So, of course, Jenna Griswold seems to be very resistant to this idea of not really showing us how clean our voter rolls are here in Colorado. So, something to keep an eye on. But unfortunately, it looks like Griswold uh, is looking bad, is looking really bad right here, And let's hope the voters do not allow her to continue her political career over the next decade or so. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next one here. So poor Jack Phillips. I mean, this poor man, a man of faith, a man of belief, of conviction, just wants to bake cakes, wants to do his work that he loves to do. And of course, he's been persecuted by our state government and radical activists who want to put him out of business because of his religious beliefs. October 4th, 2023, Colorado Supreme Court will decide a masterpiece Cakeshop case. There's Jack Phillips right there. The Colorado Supreme Court has agreed to hear Masterpiece Cakeshop owner Jack Phillips' latest appeal after a lower court ruled against the Lakewood-based business owner. Phillips, who's represented by the conservative legal advocacy group Alliance Defending Freedom, appealed to the state Supreme Court in April in the case Masterpiece Cakeshop v. Scardina after the state Court of Appeals ruled in favor of transgender attorney Autumn Scardina, who asked Phillips in 2018 to make a cake celebrating a gender transition. Scardina's request came on the same day in 2018 that the U.S. Supreme Court said it would hear another case involving Phillips, Masterpiece Cakeshop versus Colorado Civil Rights Commission. The court later narrowly ruled the commission violated Phillips' religious freedom, but did not touch on whether the state's anti-discrimination law violated his free speech rights. Wow. So, I mean, come on, this is planned. This is total persecution. This is total harassment of this individual, right? I mean, the fact that this person came in, this Autumn Scardina came in and put a cake request in for something she knew he didn't want to do on the exact same day that the U.S. Supreme Court said it would hear his case. I mean, this guy has been targeted, and our state government has played along with it. Jared Polis, Phil Weiser, these people should be ashamed of themselves for how they're treating a business owner here in Colorado. Let's hope Jack Phillips gets the justice he deserves, and let's hope he gets some sort of lawsuit or some money out of this because this poor man has put up with so much for too long. Let's go ahead and move on, see what else is in the news this week here. ColoradoSun.com, October 4th, 2023. More than a quarter of Colorado students were chronically absent from school last year. So definitely an issue talked about before. Big issue here. Just really want to bring it up again because, for better or for worse, kids are not going back to school. Maybe they got used to it during the COVID years. Maybe parents saw the how bad these schools were, the indoctrination that's there, and are pulling their kids out of school. About 270,000 public school students missed at least 10% of school days during the 2022-2023 school year, an improvement from the year before, but a rate still alarming to educators and state education officials. One of my biggest messages out there to anybody who's politically involved, the time for school choice is now. If somebody out there had enough money or had the capability to get a school choice measure on the ballot, it would pass. Parents are fed up with these public schools. Every day, every week, there's a headline about some abuse case, some parents or administrators hiding information from parents, and poor kids getting stabbed at these Denver schools or getting shot. I mean, it's a horrible situation. The drug issue, of course, is a big issue as well. But now is a time, get your kids out of public school, and I think there's an opportunity for school choice to be more viable than ever before in Colorado's history. It's a winning issue. It's an issue that needs to be emphasized. We'll just read a couple of paragraphs here. More than 1 in 4 Colorado students missed more than 10% of school during the last school year, according to an analysis released Wednesday by the Colorado Department of Education. The findings, which point to close to 270,000 students being chronically absent during the school year, are a worrisome trend for state education officials and teachers, particularly as students largely continue to trail behind in academic performance coming out of the height of the pandemic. Hey, I mean, maybe these kids don't like what they're being told. Maybe these kids don't like being told that they're a racist, that they're wrong, that they're the wrong gender, that they're having trouble out there. These kids are maybe getting fed up with what's going on in these schools. I mean, we see it all the time here. The rate of chronic absenteeism across Colorado schools last year was 31%. A student is marked chronically absent when they miss 10% or more of a school year, according to the state education department. So, get your kids out of school. Government schools are a bad place. There's better opportunities out there for them. And I think that's something that parents and voters across Colorado can get behind. Just another example of why school choice is so necessary and valuable for the liberty movement. Move on. DenverGazette.com, of course, the immigration issue is another big one out there, right? This very polarizing issue. Gazette editorial board from October 4th, 2023, saying we invited all of these immigrants. I mean, it's hard to argue, right, that the government's policies in Colorado and Denver in particular have allowed a system to be set up in which these illegal immigrants, people who are here flouting immigration law, for better or for worse, are invited. It's a safe place for them, right? A sanctuary city, a sanctuary state. To the article. As busloads of illegal immigrants arrive in Colorado, straining every fabric of our social service network, it's fun to blame Texas Governor Greg Abbott. He's the bad guy, the man putting people on buses. It's all for show, Abbott's critics say. They're not even asking if they want to come to Denver or not. They're just sending them, said John Ewing, a Denver Human Services spokesperson. as quoted in the Gazette news article. There's a reason for that, but public officials seem to forget. A 2017 memo by then Denver Sheriff Gary Wilson does not mince words regarding the treatment immigrants should expect in Denver. The city wants papers, not from immigrants, but from any official from the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency who dares enforce immigration law in Colorado. Quote, any ICE official who requests to hold a person without proper legal documents to do so shall be denied, the sheriff wrote. A 2017 ordinance prohibits city employees, quote, from collecting information on immigration or citizenship status, prohibits the sharing of any other information about individuals for purposes of immigration enforcement. In other words, city employees break the law if they assist with immigration enforcement. They break the law by merely allowing federal immigration officials on city property. Wow. After passing the 2017 law, Denver stopped sending federal officials the daily incarceration sheets the government used to monitor criminal immigrants. Wow. So these guys could be a criminal immigrant. They might know they're an illegal immigrant. They might be committing some heinous crimes and they can't tell the feds. They can't tell the federal officials about it. That seems possibly a reason for some of the crime. Of course, why Denver has become a hub for all these immigrants moving here. Check that article out. Of course, all the links are on freestatecolorado.com. You can find them on the website as every week. So check that out if you'd like to read more. We just got a few more articles I'd like to touch on. Complete Colorado, page 2, October 4th, 2023. City of Golden ballot asks voters to raise property taxes even as valuations soar. Wow. Very shameful behavior from the city of Golden, who basically wants to rob more of the taxpayers' money, take more from property owners who are going to be struggling to pay their property taxes going into next year. It appears Golden is following a few other communities across Colorado and asking its voters to raise the cost of living through a pair of ballot measures. One to raise property taxes, and a second asking to detaper or permanently keep and spend excess revenues collected on an existing tax. Complete Colorado previously reported on another pair of local tax measures, both a property and sales tax hike on the ballot in Fort Collins. The Golden ballot measures have become a prime topic of local city council races in a time when dramatic increases in valuations have led to an outcry to rein in already rapidly rising property taxes. It is something I am completely against, said candidate Jacob Luria, who is in a four-way race for Golden City District 1. I want to reduce and ultimately eliminate Golden's portion of the property tax rates. Golden currently collects 12.34 mills on homes and businesses. Ballot issue 2K asks voters to raise that by an additional 6 mills. Wow, a 50% increase. According to the ballot language, the money would fund capital needs and operational costs for the Golden Fire Department, on and on and on. Unfortunately, these governments, these city councils, counties, whatever they are, they never have enough money. They want to just bleed the people dry, reject any types of tax increases. If you're in Golden, Jacob Luria is a good pro-liberty candidate who's going to go in there and protect your property rights, but also, speak out against these City of Golden council members who are trying to take money out of your pocket. I mean, it's absolutely shameful and despicable behavior in this age when everything has become so expensive. Last two articles here about Proposition HH. Of course, got to talk about that. We're getting so close to this November election here in 2023. You got to vote against Proposition HH. Here's some great articles telling you why. Complete Colorado, page 2. Don't fall for the Proposition HH scam. October 1st, 2023. Linda Gorman. It's a deal only a government could love. If Proposition HH passes, the owner of a $500,000 house might enjoy a $185 reduction in property taxes next year. Wow. In return, he would give up over $5,000 in taxpayers' Bill of Rights taper refunds over the next decade. And even then, property tax bills will remain at historic levels. Well, there you go. I'm only going to read that first paragraph. You should read the rest. Talk to your neighbors, share articles like this with them. Your neighbors, your coworkers, people you know who are going to vote this year, vote against Proposition HH. It's a sham, it's a scam, and it's going to take away our tax refund money. Last article from Tony Gagliardi at coloradopolitics.com, October 4th, 2023. Why small businesses oppose Proposition HH. So it's not just taxpayers or that should oppose Proposition HH, but also if you own a small business, it's going to be really bad. Here we go. Everyone has a stake in defeating Proposition HH, especially small businesses, and a big reason for that is personal, literally. Most small business owners file their taxes as individuals at the individual tax rates, not as corporations at the corporate tax rates. So they're eligible for TABOR refunds, the same as everyone else. When they get a refund check, Main Street job creators and mom and pop shops typically reinvest the extra money right back into their business. For more than 30 years, thanks to the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, TABOR, Colorado has given them a refund every time the state takes in more than it spends. Maybe that's what secretly irritates the anti-TABOR forces the most. It delivers on what is promised and continues to do so. How many initiatives can claim that? The political class is now trying to repeal TABOR via Proposition HH, which is on the November ballot. This foolish proposal reflects politicians' belief that they deserve more of your money with every passing year. They don't, and they never will. Your money is yours, and it should stay that way. Heck yes. So, Tony Gagliardi, small businesses across Colorado, National Federation of Independent Businesses are opposing Proposition HH. Counties and other local governments are as well. Got to defeat, vote against Proposition HH. Well, hey, I appreciate you joining me. Free State Colorado, always some fun stuff coming out. New articles, interviews every week. Check it out. We'll see you next week on the next weekly roundup.